Drawing on Howard Rheingold, has technology created a culture of surveillance, particularly by business and government? Well, to ask that question, you kind of have to ask, what is surveillance? We mostly know surveillance being for security. Like an example would be cameras, security guards. The definition of surveillance, according to Pavlik and McIntosh, is primarily the journalism function of mass communication, which provides information about processes, issues, events, and other developments in society. This includes journalism, surveys, social media. So we all watch and read the news, whether that's from TV, social media, professional or citizen journalism, and culture implies that it's embedded in everyday life. Checking social media when we first wake up, or reading the newspaper, or posting on social media, blogs and vlogs, like, doing your makeup on the internet, that's all surveillance. We also joke about how we never read privacy policies because they're just too long. Tracking is accepted in our culture as just the price of being online, whether that's having to be on social media to connect with loved ones, or using Google Maps to find the closest gas station. So we post photos, videos, and text updates about our personal lives. We also share posts about others for entertainment or to serve a purpose, such as their fundraisers online. On social media, we also share professional news articles, such as, something from the CBC talking about the coronavirus. And sometimes we will join or discuss internet campaigns such as Black Lives Matter, Stop Asian Hate, the Me Too movement. Whether or not we are for or against it, we are still, discussing it in the public sphere. We also share citizen journalism, such as videos, photos, and other accounts of self-reporting. And we often follow these accounts to stay up to date, whether or not they are sharing other activists' information or the information that they might experience on their own. Citizen journalism fills the gaps in the public sphere that professional journalism misses. And it feels more trustworthy because it's a more personal account of what's happening. The agenda feels more transparent. What happens when social media leads to government surveillance? When Bill C-45 was introduced, First Nations opposition was originally treated as just a normal kind of civil disobedience campaign. Bill C-45, also known as the Jobs and Growth Act, would strip environmental protection in an effort to expand resource expansion and improve the federal economy. However, voices criticizing Bill C-45 for destroying Indigenous self-determination with land use and environmental protection were overtaken by citizens and professional media blaming the First Nations for their own faults, such as corrupt Indigenous leadership. Much of Canada turned their back on any resistance to the bill and indicated that settler colonialism was an unfortunate part of Canada's past, ignoring the modern colonialist implications of violating treaty rights in today's age. They also condemned First Nations for exploiting white guilt in order to be divisive with ordinary Canadians. This is an example of how mass media often fails the public sphere and contributes to activist repression, bringing up the necessity of citizen journalism. Professional journalists are considered to be gatekeepers and technically are, seeing as they choose what gets shared from aggregate media such as Canadian or Associated Press. Citizen journalists tend to have more emotion and politics infused in their stories, but because they're not typically backed by corporate interests, their agendas feel more transparent and therefore their stories more sincere. Participatory journalism puts citizens and professional journalists together, allowing for deeper coverage and wider spread of news stories. Citizen journalists are often activists because of this gap in the public sphere. What about government repression? Farmers in India demonstrated against 3 laws aimed at privatizing agriculture. Police used tear gas and batons against them. The internet was blocked by the government for days at a time in the interest of public safety and averting public emergency, so says India's Department of Information and Public Relations. And hundreds of protesters went missing, and some of them still haven't been found. And in China, there are over 50,000 internet police monitoring domestic social media. The police that monitor social media also delete posts that are deemed to be too critical of China's government. China has also blocked over 3,000 websites and has also banned any VPNs that are not under government control. These bans have negatively impacted researchers who rely on VPNs for global collaboration. Back in North America, the FBI monitors and profiles activists, often algorithmically. Keywords like hashtag Black Lives Matter or hashtag Capitol Hill will trigger the algorithm to track users. Informants will make fake profiles to try to infiltrate through assimilation and draw out information in private messages. Current US law allows police and federal agents to monitor and collect social media activity on the grounds that the information is being shared freely by the users themselves. Roughly 70% of police departments report using social media to gather intelligence for their investigations. Private companies receive tens of millions of dollars every year just to operate social media monitoring software for police departments. And less than 15% of police departments have publicly visible policies on how they collect this information. The NYPD created the Domain Awareness System, or the DAS, to conduct targeted surveillance against Muslims by connecting databases of arrest records, 911 calls, license plate readers, and footage from thousands of security cameras across New York City. In 2005, San Francisco created a similar program in order to track where Iranian immigrants lived and to better assign informants. Before the commercialization of social media in 2006, most government surveillance was physical. That means that they used wiretaps, strategically placed informants, searches of physical property, etc., in order to get the information that they wanted. Now, most intelligence is gathered through the internet, mostly through social media, and doesn't need warrants. The FBI brought back the BIE, or the Black Identity Extremist designation used in COINTELPRO, which was the same designation used to criminalize Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and allowed agents to harass and threaten him and even encourage him to commit suicide. The BIE designation paints Black activists as violent extremists just for challenging police violence, and even without proof of committing a crime or the plans to do so. Black Lives Matter activists are then investigated and profiled as prospective terrorists for condemning police violence on or offline. Well, what about corporate tracking? Employers are already allowed to install cameras, read physical mail and emails, monitor phone and computer usage, and use GPS tracking to monitor workers. UPS, Amazon, and gig-based apps like Uber or Deliveroo track workers in different ways. Amazon created a wristband to track workers' tasks through their hand movements. And UPS uses sensors in their vehicles to see when the doors are opening and closing, if the engine is on, and whether or not their seatbelt is in place. Deliveroo and other gig-based apps, however, use their phones primarily. They track how fast they go to pick up orders, how fast it takes to deliver them, etc. And they algorithmically email their workers about their performance. If their performance isn't good, they get deactivated or fired. Gig-based apps like Deliveroo have an illusion of freedom. Without bosses present, it makes you feel pretty free. However, you're still being constantly monitored. Some Deliveroo workers went on strike about some proposed payment changes, and they actually won. The precarity of the platform's control without human bosses made it difficult for the company to manage the strike and allowed the workers to organize quickly and successfully pressure Deliveroo into postponing any changes. But what about other tracking? According to a study done by Concordia University, 65% of websites don't comply with cookie laws in the EU. Cookies are often set before the box allowing users to accept or decline even appears. 80% of third-party cookies last more than a month, 22% last more than a year, and a significant number have 20-year validity periods. Also, tracking is not limited to one device and often crosses boundaries to multiple devices. The study also found that there is a direct correspondence between media freedom and tracking prominence. Countries with greater freedom of expression and information flow have more trackers, but algorithms are necessary to modern life. Even traffic lights use them. Some, however, can be dangerous. Algorithms themselves are just a set of instructions, but they reflect the biases of their designer and carry out the agendas of those who created them. Social media algorithms are intended to increase time on the platform. According to a 2018 internal study, Facebook prioritizes controversial posts to sit at the top of your feed. YouTube's suggestions have also been found to skew toward the controversial, like clickbait and fake news, in order to keep users engaged in their content and on their website. Algorithms aren't just for the internet, however, and are also used in some states to help judges carry out sentences. Algorithms are also used in courtrooms in some states, advising judges on sentencing by predicting if you are more likely to commit a crime. Compass in Florida and Wisconsin was found to be twice as likely to label Black defendants as high risk than their white counterparts, and was also found to be wrong 40% of the time. Since we're limited in preventing ourselves from being tracked, is there a way to trick the system? Can we spoof data to confuse algorithms and regain control over our privacy? And if so, how? If not, why not?